Om Rupam Rupa Vivarjitasya Bhavato Dhyanena Yat Kalpitam Stutya Nirvachaniyata Khila Guru Durikita Yanmaya Vyapitvancha Nirakritam Bhagavato Yatirtha Yatradina Shantavyam Jagadisha Tadvikalata doshatrayam matkritam. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tatsat. O God, in my meditation I have attributed forms to Thee, who art formless. By my hymns I have, as it were, contradicted that Thou art indescribable. By going on pilgrimage, I have, as it were, denied Thy omnipresence. O God, please forgive me for these three mistakes committed by me. Om, peace, peace, peace be to us all. Yes, good morning, friends. I am Swami Bhaskarananda. Usually, it is my responsibility to give talks on Sunday mornings. But nearly 6 weeks ago, I had to have a lower back surgery. And the doctors asked me to take it easy. That's why Sunday lectures are being given by my dear brother monks. Aside from that, only when I am away from Seattle, my brother monks have to give the talks on Sunday mornings. So I don't get to listen to their talks. So at least this morning, I will have that opportunity. Swami Atmajnanananda, my brother monk, he will speak this morning. He will speak on the subject meditation and peace of mind. So this is my chance also to listen to his talk. I will be sitting with you there, and I will be listening to his talk.
Revered Maharaj and devotees and friends, welcome. With a subject like this, I suppose I can't not say something about how stressed out everybody is and how tense and stressful our society is in this day and age and in time. There are so many responsibilities everyone has, single or married. If you're married with children, you have immense responsibilities and complexities. So, how do we deal with those? I remember years ago in the 60s, there used to be a series of tapes and CDs of relaxation music. And I remember seeing a warning on the back of those that said, this could be dangerous if you're playing this while you're driving, so be very careful. We're not liable, in other words. And I thought it was more or less a marketing gimmick more than anything. So business takes advantage of the situations they see, of course. And some of these things help, no doubt. But I would like to present this morning our Vedantic ideas of peace of mind and meditation. So what are we talking about? There are all kinds of definitions for meditation and peace of mind, from the sublime to the ridiculous. In this presentation, I will present Vedantic concepts and ideas. First off, we need to analyze what we are talking about. I need to define my terms. I want to keep it as simple as possible. When we speak of meditation, we mean a form of concentration. When we speak of peace of mind, we are implying that we have a certain amount of self-control. I think we can all accept that. The main reason we do not have peace of mind is because we don't have control over certain circumstances, internal and external, and they are overpowering us, which causes our mind to be disturbed. This implies that we don't have control over our mind. We may be controlled in certain things, disciplined in our work, but all things considered, we may not be able to control certain departments of our life. Getting along with others creates huge stress, difficulties in the office or even at home within the family, I'm sure. So controlling the mind is especially and exceedingly important. The reason we cannot meditate is because we cannot concentrate our mind on a certain subject when we want to. So implied in what I've just said in both cases of the disturbed mind or our lack of being able to concentrate when we want to, we are talking only about the mind. And it is evident that these two problems are really pretty much the same problem, same difficulty. We have these things maybe we haven't worked on too hard either. We have a lack of ability to concentrate and cope, and we have a lack of the ability to concentrate in meditation. The two are connected. The problem is mental, our own minds. For every problem in human life, there's a solution. In science, the solution to any problem lies in an analysis and restatement of the problem itself. This is the scientific method we're familiar with in the Western world. But at the same time, some things are harder to solve and deal with than others. Especially the mind is unusually complex. What does Vedanta say about how we can gain peace of mind and how we can learn to meditate? Are peace of mind and meditation connected? Can we have one without the other? So what does Vedanta say about it? Vedanta is a unique method because it makes definite statements about the nature of man and his potential and his relationship with the universe. It gives sweeping idealistic generalizations about the nature of our life and ourselves. These definitions are always achievable in Eastern thought. The difference between Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy is, in Eastern philosophy, the philosophy goes in a certain direction. It's for the sake of deepening our lives, building our character, and going deeper into ourselves, knowing the self. It has an ultimate goal. I think all 6 systems have this ultimate goal of connecting ourselves, connecting the seeker with something he can realize and experience. In the Western philosophy, we find more or less ingenious patterns of thinking, and it maybe works best in academia, where there's reinforcement back and forth between the philosopher who comes up with a new philosophy and his students or appreciative audiences. So Vedanta invites us to accept the challenge of believing in our own divinity as a working hypothesis, to dedicate our lives to this experiment. The realization of this in your own private life, as many men and women have done so over thousands of years. Vedanta starts with the sweeping generalization that all human beings are essentially spiritual. We use the word divine. Vedanta starts with the sweeping generalization that the reality of yourself and the universe is unity. It's a unity, not a material entity. There's not a material connection, ultimately. But as long as you perceive duality of matter and life, yourself and a material universe, yourself and anything else, you will experience duality, which is material and will not arrive at unity. The ultimate unity, which is your truest, highest self. Vedanta starts with the proposition that Brahman alone is real, that the universe is only apparently and changeably real, and that each individual soul is one with Brahman. I like to think we're all units of the universe. We're somehow organic parts of this universe, human beings and the larger material envelope or universe that we live in. By following the right method with a qualified teacher, by following the clues we discover within us in a meditation practice, say, or spiritual discipline, and following the tried and true method of meditation, we can follow the clues we discover along the way interiorly in order to discover ourselves in the highest sense of the term. If we don't know ourselves, how can we make the right decisions in life? How can we direct our minds and our actions? This self-knowledge has been an ancient theme both in the West and the East. Since Greek times, the Greeks were seeking the knowledge of the self. Know thyself was the dictum of the oracle, I believe, that spoke to Socrates. Know thyself. Now, this was a Greek dictum, an ancient Greek dictum that probably came from India. There has been a lot of connection, and scholarship today is showing that there were many connections and interactions between the Greeks and the Persians and the Indians, the sages of India. So there was a great deal of influence, and it trickles in through Greek philosophy into Western philosophy through the Romans and up to our day today. We have this sense that India stands for meditation and peaceful interactions, going deeper into ourselves, the wisdom and knowledge we expect from the East. We are never let down if we really look into it. Yoga is the technical name for the discipline of bringing the mind under control so that one can meditate. Without bringing the mind under control, there can't be any reliable concentration. Without steady concentration, there can't be any meditation. If we watch our mind, don't we find that through concentration we experience oneness? For example, let us say we were reading a good book. Maybe we've set aside some time for reading a book, a book that we want to have been wanting to read for a while, and we're too busy to do that. Maybe it's a Friday night after a week's long work, so we curl up with a book that we've been saving for this kind of time, a time that we really want to get into this. As we read along, we get involved in it with one-pointed concentration, and we aren't aware really of the time passing. In time, we become a little self-conscious of what we've been doing, and we look at the clock and see a whole hour has gone by, and we were not aware of it. It seemed only like a few minutes. We forgot ourselves completely in that concentration. We forgot all about time and our other duties, stress of our ego, stress of responsibilities, and we even lost track of where we were. We lose track of time, space, and self-consciousness sometimes in common everyday experiences. There's a joy connected with this experience. You compare notes with the friends, and they too have had these experiences. It's a very universal experience we find out amongst human beings because our intellects and minds are so important. It's also a volatile experience, and sometimes we can't get it back when we want to, which would suggest the mind also is not in control always. We're subject to emotions and moods and all that. But if we were on a spiritual path and we were perceptive and had some experience, say in yoga, mental yoga, I don't mean the physical yoga, maybe we could have learned some other things. What could we have learned? Well, we could have learned that concentration brings peace of mind through oneness, non-separateness. And it brings us into contact with our higher, truer self. It gives us a hint of what our potential might be. A truer self beyond time, space, and the stress of self-awareness, self-consciousness, interactions, and social things, all this that causes these problems. We could have also learned, if we were somewhat familiar with the yoga practice, that what we had just experienced was pratyahara. That's a Sanskrit word, which most people won't know. It means the withdrawal of the senses from their objects, which is one of the essential practices of Raja Yoga. It's the fifth step of Raja Yoga, which has 8 steps towards perfect concentration, the highest intense concentration, which brings us into contact with our higher self. And it creates a permanent transformation of our nature into something else. It is one of those stages of concentration you need to practice. This pratyahara, I'll bring up a few Sanskrit words, but not too many. This withdrawal of the senses from their object, we noticed this when we were reading this book. We were totally absorbed. We forgot the distractions of the senses. All day long we are distracted by these senses, which do create their disturbances in the mind. So how at the time of meditation, most of you have meditation practices, I think, do you suddenly calm the mind down? Extremely difficult after a day's long work of interacting. So there was a joy, too, with this oneness of concentration. But it does not last, and we aren't in control of ourselves all the time, our minds, bodies. But when we are serious about seeking peace of mind, when we are really serious about the experience of peace of mind, and it becomes very important to us, not just a dilettante interest, then we will get it. It must be extremely important, then we will seek guidance from those who have achieved it before us. We will seek a direction from a tradition that has a history of self-knowledge and people going to it to seek self-knowledge over the centuries and millennia. We'll seek out the steps and the methods necessary to calm our minds. I've thought for a long time since I got into Vedanta that the yoga's technique, the yoga method should be taught in high schools to teach kids concentration. How do you teach concentration? I don't think there are any classes in college or high school that teach concentration as a target, and just that. The methods of Raja Yoga could be very well adapted to our school system, I'm sure, with great benefit to all of us. We could learn these things earlier on. Now let me diverge from my theme just a little bit for a moment. The attraction of science in the world today, I'll bring up science because science is such a reliable and a disciplined way of life, and it gives us good examples in disciplining our minds. So, the attraction of science in the world today is its reliability, and that what it says it can demonstrate. Its knowledge is verifiable by anyone. Any person following the discipline can perform an experiment and get the correct promised results. Scientific knowledge is founded in experience. Even in Swami Vivekananda's day, 150 years ago, Swami Vivekananda was probably our first Vedantist to visit this country. Truly a great soul from India, who is still in the process of transforming our lives here in the West. So I bring him up quite often. We hold him in great respect and reverence, and we often quote from him. In Swami Vivekananda's day, 115 years ago he came, he was aware of, quote, he says, religion and metaphysical philosophy have a bad name nowadays. They still do even today, don't they? If you try to tell rationally, scientifically biased, intelligent people today that real religion is based on experience, not on dogma and private theories, they're not in the least bit interested. They're not going to listen to you. You get blank stares. Swami Vivekananda wrote, again, I'll quote here, every educated man seems to say, oh, these religions are only bundles of theories without any standard to judge them by, each man preaching his own pet ideas. This was true then, and it's still true today. Religion doesn't have a high regard amongst better educated people that much. But I've also read statistics, which tends to contradict that says amongst scientists there's the same percentage of people who go to church and have a religious life as in the general public. One of the greatest scientists today, you're all familiar with his name, Stephen Hawking. He's a theoretical physicist, and he's speaking here. I'm going to quote just a short sentence from him, from one of his books. He's making this statement in the context of theoretical physics only, nothing to do with religion. He says, what we regard as reality is conditioned by the theory to which we subscribe. And his example he gives is, before Einstein, there were certain contradictions scientists found in previous theories. Those could not be evened out. So Einstein came along and he was able to create a theory, his general theory of relativity, that harmonized these two conflicting principles. But there's an inherent limitation of science, which is a mind-body exercise only. Science does not include investigation into the reality or non-reality of the soul. Naturally, it does not. It naturally does not, and that's fine. We expect that. It does not study the soul or God. This is the area of the study of metaphysics, religion, and mysticism, not science. In our practice of yoga, we have the same mind-body limitation in the beginning, not only in yoga, but in all of the four yogas. Here we teach and encourage Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Raja Yoga. These are the four classical yogas that we teach and try to encourage a balance of all of those. But some of us will have tendencies toward one or two or the others. Not all of them necessarily. In our early practice of these spiritual disciplines, we have the same mind-body limitation to our thinking, which requires a statement of theory first, the creation of a reality from that, which we subscribe to and practice. And then we have the realization of and the verification of the promised result later. The process is the same as in science. In real religion, if I might be allowed to call it that, in real religion, all our knowledge is based on experience. In the religion of seeking, investigation, experience, and verification, this is the religion of finding peace of mind. Religion as a science, as Swami Vivekananda calls it. We practice under the guidance of one who has experienced the self, the teacher, and we get the promised result by following the instructions of the teacher and the texts. And in time we get the same promised results that he got by following his teachers and his lifestyle. We achieve self-knowledge as he did, and we pass it on in the same way. Where's the mystery about it? It is just as rational a process as any lab experiment in science. Experience is just as necessary for knowledge in religion as it is in science. Otherwise, it's simply social convention, pretty much. It can help organize society, but does not help the individual in any higher sense. It justifies our everyday lives, and we are benefited by it to a certain degree, of course. It creates orderliness in society. But if we are seekers and find this stressful mind something we need to deal with, then I think we'll move on and try to look deeper. Experience is just as necessary for the knowledge in religion as it is in science. In order to get experience and verification of the theory, which in the case of spiritual seeking and the practice of the 4 yogas, we start with a theory as we understand it. This creates a reality for us. We use this reality to define our practice. We work in the reality until we get the results of the method. The scientist said, his quote was, "What we regard as reality is conditioned by the theory to which we subscribe." So when Einstein came along and harmonized 2 conflicting problems of the science of its day, that created a new reality, a new way of looking at nature and the universe. In the spiritual life, it's somewhat similar. The theory in Raja Yoga is that when you practice and understand the aphorisms, you will get the promised results and experience self-knowledge. This is verification for the individual seeker through the method of Raja Yoga. For instance, in Vedanta we say that Brahman alone is real. The universe is only changeably, apparently real. And the soul of each individual is one with Brahman. Now, after we hear this kind of statement, an interested seeker may be inspired by that, as I was. And I wanted to go deeper into that. Many seekers can be drawn to this. It seems to be an approach, a holistic approach to our real problems in life. Science can't do that. A bhakti seeker subscribes to the theory of a personal God. A jnani seeker subscribes to the theory of an impersonal God, the formless absolute. His process is different in his thinking than the bhakti devotee. Both start with a theory, and they fit themselves into this identity. It's a new kind of identity, living a spiritual life, becoming a devotee and worshiping God sincerely in a personal form, or similarly worshiping God in a formless, without a form, in a formless way. Just like in science, a good theory must be able to predict events, and the theory changes with observed phenomena. And so the same is true with the seeker-learner on the path of self-realization. As he refines his theory through practice and realization and insights and experience along the path, then his definition will change, his definition of terms will change. For example, what is God? That's one of the most troublesome questions in the world. Philosophers have worked on that for centuries. What is God? What do you think is God? In the beginning of your spiritual life, say you're a devotee of the personal God, it certainly won't be the same thing as in the end after you've realized God. So these definitions have to change as we go along. Whether it is the practice of bhakti yoga or the practice of raja yoga or jnana yoga, the same necessity is there to still the mind. And these different methods have different ways to do this. Bhakti yoga stills the mind in a certain way by concentration and love of the chosen ideal. The breath naturally stops. Say, if we were talking about one of the stages of Raja Yoga, in terms of that, that's called kumbhaka, where the concentration is so natural and intense that the breathing stops. In Jnana Yoga, that would be different. But in Jnana Yoga, still the object, and especially in Raja Yoga, is to still the mind and quiet the mind so that in this quietness, the intuition, the self, the real self, beyond this everyday self, becomes alert, becomes evident. When the mind becomes concentrated and one-pointed, it becomes calm and still. Chapter 1, verse 2 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, that's the real classic work on the yoga system, coming from ancient India, says, yoga is restraining the mind stuff from taking various forms. This is a statement of the purpose of Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is in 4 chapters, I think, 133 verses, or aphorisms as we call them. And those aphorisms you can take a step at a time, starting from the simpler beginnings to the more difficult and subtler types of discriminations later. It moves in progression. It's probably the original self-help book in the world for spiritual knowledge and growth. Yoga, the system, and the Shankya system are come from India, very ancient India, perhaps even as far back as 6,000 BC. Maybe 4,000. Nobody seems to know, really. Now, let me consider some of the practical ways to improve our concentration and therefore have more peace of mind. The Bhagavad Gita, that great ancient book of wisdom from India, says there are 4 types of seekers: the person in distress, the person seeking knowledge, the person seeking wealth, and the person imbued with wisdom. There are many types of seekers, as we can imagine. But generally they fall into these 4 categories I just mentioned, but also the 4 yogas satisfy most temperaments, no matter what the culture, the time, whoever, the 4 temperaments of the seeker, in any culture, in any time, male or female. These systems of self-realization have nothing to do with sexual differences, male or female, with culture or training or conditionings of nationalities. They're universal. Though we are very sincere in our lives and want to do the right things in our everyday lives and only want to be happy, very often nothing seems to work. There's disillusionment sets in. The whole problem, if we really analyze it, is the mind. The mind is everything in human life. If you have an analytical mind and you see that the only valuable reality in life is the self, and you identify with the self within, then you have already done a lot of preliminary work which ensures that you will find out what you're seeking for. There are people who start at this level. That's a different type of seeker. So what can I do to help myself, you might ask? Let us say I find a guru, and let us say by my searching I have found a Vedantic tradition. Of course, this whole presentation is rigged a little bit. You'll notice that. Now, let us say we fast forward. Let us say we have found a Vedantic tradition. I have to stick with that because I know the most about it. I don't claim to know or be a perfect practitioner, but I try. I keep trying somehow. Now, let us say we fast forward our story, our hypothetical story here, and say that we've been practicing for many years these things, and we've gained a little proficiency and some gratifying experiences in meditation. We've practiced for a long time, maybe. Let us say we're encouraged and we know we're on the right track. The teacher directs and keeps us on the path, but the path can be described pretty much the same for all human beings on this level. I like to think of Raja Yoga as the algebra of spiritual practice. I've heard it said that way, and I like that. So it's kind of the basic fundamentals of all spiritual practices. And all spiritual practices you can find within Raja Yoga and its philosophy and its methods. First of all, let us say in our practice for the control of the mind, we have practiced being good and doing good. We've practiced the moral and ethical practices. This produces in the mind a certain strength of mind that allows you to hold on to something and stick with it. These moral and ethical practices, the do's and don'ts of every religion has these. This creates a certain control over the mind to begin with. We have to deal first with the more physical. Raja Yoga deals first with the more physical control, the mind controlling the body, and the body sitting in a proper posture. These more external things are for the purpose of learning how to creating the optimal conditions for deep concentration. I think in a way you can interpret Raja Yoga that way, that all of its methods and aphorisms are for the sake of concentration only. It's the path of concentration, deeper and deepest. Breathing can be a problem. If you're meditating, sometimes you've had experiences like that. The breathing can be irregular and then it distracts your mind. Sometimes you become self-conscious and you realize the breathing just when the mind seemed to be getting collected and concentrating itself. This distracts the mind. So, in the beginning, breathing exercises help to calm the body. Slow, regular breathing can help to calm the body and calm the mind, therefore. Now, Swami Bhaskaranan has mentioned many times our interior friend that's so close to us that we forget about sometimes. We try to run away from it, but we can't. It follows us everywhere we go. Emerson says, "My giant goes with me wherever I go." That's our interior problem, our minds But we have another friend that isn't quite as close. That's our bodies. And they can be extremely distracting when we sit for meditation. The concentrations of Raja Yoga demand that you concentrate and sit easily. And so this takes time. Then we can concentrate without distraction. Those who have a meditation practice know what I'm talking about. Raja Yoga is designed to make a permanent change of your life. It's not meant just for a quick fix, as I might put it, colloquially. And real meditation, we are told, comes not first but last. Because this is a long-term transformation of the person, controlling the mind is extremely difficult. It takes time and effort over many years. It takes an environment, a community, it takes a tradition and a teacher. When the body and the mind are compatible, under some control, meditation is better. You can sometimes have good meditations. These come slowly, not right at first. I mentioned two of the steps, or one of the steps earlier. Remember, with the example of getting totally absorbed in a book, interesting book, we forget mind, body, senses, time and space even. That's called pratyahara. I won't dwell on these 8 steps, but there are 8 steps to the yoga practice. They are yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So after we've started the first and practiced the first 4, usually it will take years, but we still try our practice and be regular about our meditations anyway, in a good community with others. So then let us say we reach the practice of withdrawal, the 5th step. We got a little insight into that just from a common experience. But we have to develop more of a skill at it. After pratyahara, this withdrawal, I like to think of the 6th step as dharana, as another form of withdrawal, because then we have to concentrate on one subject. We have to concentrate on one subject, and at that point, that's a form of withdrawing also from all distractions. Assuming the mind can concentrate on one subject, the last 3 steps are deep, deeper, and deepest. They're degrees of concentration until releasing us from all bodily and mental attachments. What is left cannot be described. I'd like to put it that way. This is the goal of yoga. Then there can be real peace of mind. I'd like to describe that real goal of yoga as oneness. These are only suggestions. It's nothing of the kind. But it gives us a direction to think of. And oneness has always been a favorite target of mine to try and seek. So I would say meditation and peace of mind absolutely go together. Real peace can only come in oneness. Otherwise, there's this problem of duality. On whatever level, it can be very subtle and fine. As we go deeper into concentration, our distractions become more difficult to deal with sometimes. We don't want just a little peace of mind. If you want transformation and a true overcoming of your problems, then this ancient system of yoga is for you. Now, I'm carrying on here maybe a long time, and I would like to bring it to a close with a quote from Sri Ramakrishna. I like to end with something sweet and profound and simple. Sri Ramakrishna is our ideal here, and if you're familiar at all with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, as most of you are, then you know of the wonders that are therein, and the wonderful spiritual advice we can get from that. There are so many different characters in the Gospel that the recorder, M, is his name. It's an acronym, I guess. He was a very reliable recorder. And I think we can find ourselves amongst this group that was there with Sri Ramakrishna in his day. Some of our questions would be the same questions that were asked by his devotees. But let me quote from Sri Ramakrishna, and he's giving us some more clues how we can concentrate the mind to discover these facts of the inner life, and how we can carry on our spiritual life even though it seems long and drawn out and not producing results. Here's an example from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. It's in a dialogue form. Sri Ramakrishna is speaking, quote, "The sound Om is Brahman. The rishis and sages practiced austerity to realize that sound Brahman. After attaining perfection, one hears the sound of this eternal word." He goes on to say, "What will you gain," some sages ask, "by merely hearing this sound?" Sri Ramakrishna continues, "You hear the roar of the ocean." Here's an example, similar example. "You hear the roar of the ocean from a distance. By following the roar, you can reach the ocean. As long as there is the roar, there must also be the ocean. By following the trail of Om, you attain Brahman, for which the word is the symbol. That Brahman has been described by the Vedas as the ultimate goal. But such vision is not possible as long as you are conscious of your ego. A man realizes Brahman only when he feels neither I nor you, neither one nor many." Now, here's another metaphor, an analogy. Think of the sun and of 10 jars filled with water. This is from the same part in the Gospel. This is Sri Ramakrishna speaking. Think of the sun and of 10 jars filled with water. The sun is reflected in each jar. At first you see one real sun and one reflection. Each jar represents a jiva. A jiva means a personal, an individual person, an individual soul. Each jar represents a jiva. Following the reflection, one can find the real sun. Through the individual soul, one can reach the Supreme Soul. Through spiritual discipline, the individual soul can get the vision of the Supreme Soul. What remains when the last jar is broken cannot be described. In these last two analogies, he is saying by examining one unit of the universe, ourselves, we can know the essence of the universe. That is Brahman. We are each one of us a unit of this universe. Can you deny that? By the practice of spiritual discipline, that means going within. We can see our own divinity that is already there within us. We can prove it and justify it to ourselves, but it takes time. We can prove it here and now. But what better encouragement could there be in this world than to know this? I think this is a wonderful positive encouragement when spiritual practices don't seem to be doing anything. Thank you very much for coming. Glad that I could be with you. So let me end with a chant from, it's from the Ganesha Stava. I don't know what that is. These are ancient chants, very beautiful in sentiment. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandam advaita purnam parang nirgunang nirvisheshang niriham parabrahma rupam ganema majema. O Lord, Thou art unborn, absolute and formless. Thou art beyond bliss and again bliss itself, the One and the Infinite. Thou art the Supreme, without attributes, differentiation, and desire. Thou art verily the Supreme Brahman.